Advanced TV Herstory, the podcast that brings you fresh perspective on the importance of TV in our lives. We tell stories of leadership, persistence, and achievement of TV women, because in the lives of women, no other media platform has influenced or inspired so many. Lo, these 60 years. Women of all ages have been impacted by what they've seen and will see on TV. So join us for a little advanced TV herstory by streaming it directly on our website, tvherstory.com, or anywhere you find podcasts. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Loyal listeners, TV Herstorians, you know what? We are all fans. So today we are going to talk about two other women who are also fans of TV and who saw opportunities to take that appreciation for TV and fill a void of fandom that has changed how networks, how TV producers, how the whole game is played. It's a story that actually spans about 40 years. So bear with me, because really what you have to do is think conceptually about how much the entertainment business has changed in these last 40 years. Think of all of the aspects by which it is both a reflection of society, and also society picks up many cues that come from entertainment. And think about how much social media has removed so many of those traditional barriers between fan and performer. Those barriers that have been around since literally the early days of silent movies, when a performer or a cast was telling a story in a studio somewhere far, far away, and then it got distributed well out into the heartland. And who were those people? They never got to connect. But today, we have legends like Rita Moreno and Marlo Thomas who are on Twitter. Go ahead and follow them. They're fascinating. Or follow Candice Bergen on Instagram. Her handle is Bergenbags. And just knowing why her handle is Bergenbags, you'll find that out if you follow her. But seriously, she's hysterical. Following these amazing women it's largely a one-way street. Don't expect them to follow you. But it is fun to see the world through their eyes and learn what they find important. But what did fans do before social media? Who can even remember? Who can remember what life was even like before the internet? Try to think about what it was like to try to book air travel before there was a website. So you might ask yourself, in the TV realm, how did viewers connect with one another when A, there wasn't time in the morning to discuss last night's TV at work, because nobody does that anymore, or B, that there were so few channels that the likelihood of everyone watching the same thing was high, that there was that shared experience, and C, that everyone at that time felt powerless to the omnipotent Nielsen ratings, which decided the fates of every network series and left people, regular people, scratching their heads when the good ones got canceled and the crummy ones were renewed. So this episode is about two women, Dorothy Swanson and Liz Prue. Using the best tools that each of them had available at the time, both have developed insights into helping fans show support for their favorite series. What they have in common is that they are both very strategic women. They are organized, and they appreciate good TV. And we'll take them in chronological order, because without Dorothy Swanson and the viewers for quality television, TV as we know it today, or what we watch in syndication, might in fact look very different. And then we will understand, or we'll learn a bit more about Liz Prue and her colleague, Lindy Smith, and where their website, Pure Fandom, came from and where it's going. But whether you are alive or not, fans of TV, think about the year 1984. Now, this was back when, even though there was cable, really a viewer could get along without cable. That free of charge on network TV, some of the best TV ever produced, was right there. It was there for you. It was there for you to program into your VCR to even watch in a delayed fashion. And it was written by talented men and women, and it was performed by more talented women and men. And there was depth to many of these series. So let's look at, for instance, the 1985 Emmy lineup, right? For the best dramatic series. There is not a bum in the bunch. Cagney and Lacey, Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice, Murder, She Wrote, and St. Elsewhere. Actually, the bums that year must have been on ABC, because the 5 titles that I've just listed for you, the 5 titles, are either CBS or NBC. Now, contenders for the Emmy in the Best Comedy category, The Cosby Show, Cheers, Family Ties, Kate and Allie, and Night Court. Again, NBC and CBS. These were not the best years for ABC. And let me just take this one step further, because in the categories of lead actress in a drama, there was another stable of champions. Tyne Daly as Mary Beth Lacey in Cagney and Lacey, Debbie Allen, yes, Debbie Allen, as Lydia Grant on Fame, and that even at that point was a syndicated series. Angela Lansbury as Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote, Sharon Gless as Christine Cagney in Cagney and Lacey, Veronica Hamill as Joyce Davenport on Hill Street Blues. I'm rattling off some really, really big names. These were very talented women. And if you then take a look over into the comedy series, lead actress, Jane Curtin as Allie Lowell in Kate and Allie, Shelley Long as Diane Chambers on Cheers, Felicia Rashad as Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show, Susan St. James as Kate McCardle on Kate and Allie, and lastly, Isabel Sanford, who was overlooked every single time as Louise Jefferson on The Jeffersons. This is the A-League right here. But wow, you're thinking. Those network executives really had an eye for quality, right? Right? This is just a lot of smart programming moves on the backside. Listeners, no. Nope. They didn't. They really didn't. Loyal listeners of this podcast may remember that we did an early episode. This was one I produced all by myself in the basement in Minnesota. One of two about the diligence and persistence, the incredible story that was required to get Cagney and Lacey on the air and positioned for success. This notion that a drama could star two women who are colleagues, who are police officers, who are the stars, and that it's about them. And that was a very foreign concept at the time. And so the episode entitled The 6 Lost Episodes of Cagney and Lacey is the story that brings us to this moment, this story that I'm going to tell you. And it intersects with the work that Dorothy Swanson was doing from her kitchen table. Dorothy and hundreds of fans had crossed the moat that separated fans from network decision makers. And it was a very conscious movement on their part. Because remember that entertainment culture was changing with each passing series and season, but it was largely some really strong strategic work by Dorothy and her group that enabled viewers to find their voice, brought writers to actually garner real life feedback about their work, and it was at a time when TV was forced to be challenged. They would prefer not to have been challenged, to balance art with profitability. Because Dorothy Swanson founded the organization called Viewers for Quality Television. And in a sense, it was the model of a fan club, if you know what a fan club is. And it was at a time when the organizer's a toolkit consisted of postage and printing and envelopes, telephones, and newspapers. Yes, 40 years ago, that was what it took to organize something. So in the year 2000, Dorothy wrote a book, and it's called The Story for Viewers for Quality Television, and it was published. And it starts off, as it should, telling of the impetus of this organization, because nobody just sits around and says, hey, I have too much time on my hands, I think I'm going to start an organization. No, it started this way. In Dorothy's words, all I wanted was to see more episodes of Cagney and Lacey, the CBS drama about two police officers who were friends as well as co-workers. But CBS canceled the show in May 1983 after 1.5 seasons and marginal ratings. This cancellation set off a reaction in me that profoundly changed my life, and if my press clippings are to be believed, changed the course of network television. I wanted to save that show. Christine Cagney, as played by Sharon Gless, and Mary Beth Lacey, as played by Tyne Daly, were the most fully realized characters I had ever discovered on television, and I couldn't let their stories end. So I set out to save the show. An activist was born. There were many Cagney and Lacey fans around the country who petitioned CBS that summer of 1983, so I'm told. According to the people connected with the show at the time, I was the most ardent and determined. Okay, so end quote from Dorothy. That's kind of what got her going. What I will say is this: Viewers for Quality Television was, in a sense, a fan club for good TV series. Through its newsletters, newspaper coverage, and even an awards banquet attended by network executives and stars of series, it encouraged viewers to advocate for quality series. And it rewarded those associated with the series already on the air. And when the chips were down for a series, a show, they organized intense campaigns to save them. Strategy and leadership in this group was fairly centralized, you should know, with Dorothy and a handful of organizers acting as the interface between the networks and the fans. But ultimately, the actions by fans all over the country broke through to the networks. And that's where the petitions and the letters and the phone calls, that true grassroots sense, really, it rose up, it broke through, and it changed things. So Viewers for Quality Television, as Dorothy alluded to, was born out of a sense that Cagney and Lacey was too good of a series to just let go. And when you think about how many really good series were allowed to just let go, you realize that their tenacity and their belief in that series had to be pretty phenomenal. So Dorothy continues, quote, "On May 10th, 1983, Barney Rosenzweig, who is the producer of Cagney and Lacey, called me from New York, where he learned the network's decision to cancel. He identified himself and said, quote, 'You're our biggest fan, but I'm afraid I don't have very good news for you. We're not on the schedule.'" End quote of Barney. And Dorothy goes on to say, "I was amazed that he would take the time to call. I vehemently protested and said, 'No, it's not over.'" Feels like that was a bit of a tipping point for Dorothy. And maybe as she tells about her life, her background, and what she thought she could contribute, it was just that matter of fate where everything came together at just the right time. Now, listener, whether you're a community organizer or you work for a nonprofit or you just really care about something, reading Dorothy's book is a real reminder that when you connect passion with even a few tools, wonderful things can happen. Over the course of the organization's life, Dorothy and thousands of viewers around the country influenced network decisions on series like Designing Women, China Beach, Twin Peaks, Homicide, Life on the Street. It's actually a fairly extensive list, and she goes in depth in this book, telling the backstory of what they considered was quality, how they selected series to really fight for, and how they encouraged people to keep that flow of dialogue going, so that maybe there was an understanding that there was more work on the network side to save a show before it actually really fell into peril. Listeners, you'll always get from me a higher sense of context, because how many of you really remember the mid-'80s? I mean, I lived them, but I can't say that I really have strong memories of all of the different series that were on. But what I do have a memory of is that it was a transitional time for American TV. And so to have an organization like Viewers for Quality Television bring forth a middle-class, educated fan base that was learning, it was an understanding, it was a reality, that TV, like all other forms of entertainment, really is driven by money and advertising. And that battle, that quest for quality was always going to bump up against the advertisers and the ratings. But there were so many different mechanisms to impact the ratings and even the viewership. And it had to do with the schedule, and it had to do with the consistency of the schedule, and even some of the promotions that were done on the backside. America was losing its homogeneity in the 80s. Things were becoming much more diverse. The baby boom was then officially adults. And the network TV was looking in the mirror, and it was seeing a dinosaur. And that's because American homes were being wired for cable at a phenomenal rate. So there it is, the mid-'80s. And for 15 years, Dorothy often served as a conduit to the fan base that otherwise didn't have a platform. That was mainly to the network executives of the traditional ABC, NBC, and CBS networks. Now, in a few minutes, we will hear from Liz Prue, who today runs a fan site, which is called purefandom.com, where thousands of fans read and interact about their favorite shows, all sorts of genres and channels, all sorts of sources. And All of this activity is coordinated by dozens of superfans who care about the series that they feel are good, that they feel are quality. So it's not as though the 80s and the 90s was quality TV and this is something different. It's just that for this moment, pure fandom doesn't necessarily apply the word quality as a term, but rather they just embrace those who have that shared interest in a series. Now, let me just finish up talking about Dorothy's fantastic career and her legacy, because to understand today what a website can do and what a website as robust as Pure Fandom can do, you think, wow, that dialogue, it's so awesome. It's, it's so interactive and it's so timely. There's just this immediate gratification. Well, so Dorothy, though, can match that in a postage stamp and printing kind of way, because on pages 182 and 183 in her book, she gives this great example of what such an online forum would have looked like before there was such a thing. In viewer for quality television newsletters, which went out monthly, and they were subscribed by and mailed to thousands in the United States and Canada, contributors shared their thoughts about a TV series called Rosie O'Neill, actually the Trials of Rosie O'Neill, and this was the series that Sharon Gless starred in after Cagney and Lacey. Viewers took the time to write paragraphs about content and story arcs and Rosie O'Neill dialogue, and then they would mail their piece, their paragraphs, to viewers for quality television and the editors of the newsletter, and then those folks would judge whether or not it was worth to put in the newsletter, and then they keyed it in for publication, and then it got mailed. Was there a time delay? Yes. Did it engage viewers? Yes. It wasn't enough to save the series, but I have to believe that there were network people at every level who were reading those newsletters, because that was the highest level of analysis and fan focus grouping that was going on. Pretty powerful. So throughout her book, Swanson also shares how local newspaper interest would build bridges geographically with fans. Fans of quality TV then had the opportunity to attend conventions and conferences and this award banquet to further their fandom. Beyond the girls screaming at a Beatles concert or being in the audience of Ed Sullivan, it was just fandom. So if you're a student of television, academically or just for fun, Dorothy's book from 2000 is a must-read. And it is because she talks about postage stamps and envelope stuffing parties. But as I said, those were the tools that kept people together for the time. Think about the significance of all of her work and see, in her words, her strategic eye, the decision-making that had to happen, and true leadership in this arena where the other side, the side that they were going up against as fans, was dominated by men in suits, data, money, and a tremendous distance between those who were delivering a product and those who were receiving it, the fans.
I hope that our impact was that we challenged the networks to leave quality shows on the air and allow them to develop further, and encouraged them to present more quality shows, and that there was an audience for shows that were excellent. There was even a hunger for that, and that our legacy would be that viewers now know how to make their voice heard, and they know that they don't have to just sit back and take a cancellation. They could try to save a show.
So there's two ways to get the full story: Dorothy's book or this documentary that was just released this year entitled United We Fan. Go to Facebook for more about the film United We Fan and the movement which keeps people united and connected loosely under the name United We Fan. Go to Facebook for more about the film and the movement which keeps people connected loosely under the name United We Fan. And here's how it's described on Facebook. Fans, stars, creators, and more come together to explore the dynamic history and evolution of Save Our Show television fan campaigns, from the letter writing of yesterday to social media campaigns of today. Two key aspects to this rise in engagement: technology, and obviously the competition that exists today from networks to streamed content, and even competition for the amount of time people spend watching their favorite series.
I believe the competition from the cable networks and streaming services that we have today have definitely made the networks change their expectations and lower their expectations, which is a positive thing, because more shows are given a longer period of time to find that required audience. I've noticed more that if a network puts a show on the air, they'll pretty much leave it there for as many episodes as they originally ordered, which is something that we predicted would happen eventually. And if they had only thought of that years ago, but there wasn't the competition then that there is now. The prize is still the most viewers that they can get to watch, but those expectations have lowered, I believe.
Next, we're going to hear from Liz Prue about how she too, out of pure fan joy and interest in a series, translated that enthusiasm to something larger, and something that is picking up on the work of Viewers for Quality Television and the United We Fan flag. But first, my TV Herstory hat is off to Michael Sparaga, who wrote, directed, and produced the film. Contact him via the United We Fan Facebook page to get more information about future screenings. Now, folks, on to Liz Prue and her partner, Lindy Smith, because they too see that good and fun can come when people connect and engage and become more emotionally invested in a series. They just use different tools.
Oh gosh. So I think where to start with that would be that we never had that oh gosh moment, because it just kind of happened. And I think that's part of the beauty of this industry. So Lindy and we went to high school together, became best friends in college. And then when we graduated from college, you're schlepped into the real world and you realize, you can make more money bartending than you can at like another office job or whatever. So we were just kind of like struck with, post-college reality. And we started watching similar TV shows. And this is around the time of Lost, when Lost and one of my idols, Carlton Cuse, kind of started the whole, I believe the official term is transmedia. They started to create these immersive experiences online for Lost. Like, I don't know if you ever watched the show, but you could go to abc.com and they had Lost had its own pillar page where they would have all of these engaging experiences about the Dharma Initiative and fan theories. And it was really the first show, like mainstream show, that had done something like that. And so it was around that time. All this stuff was very new. And Lindy and I started watching The Vampire Diaries, and which is still one of my favorite shows to this day. Another idol of mine is the creator, executive producer, Julie Plec, fierce female in entertainment. Lindy and I would text each other on commercial breaks because, we were too broke at the time to have TiVo or anything like that. And this is pre-streaming, and we would just say all these funny things to each other about the show. And we would always joke that we were called Team TSD, Team TV Supernatural Dramas, which, as a current marketing consultant, I want to say on the record, I know how horrible that name is. But it was a joke. It was just a funny thing we did together. And Lindy would always say and tease that we would have a blog one day. So we were drinking one night and she started a Tumblr, sent it to me, and we started writing recaps about The Vampire Diaries and True Blood. This is in like 2011, I think, 2012. And we would write recaps. It was very bizarre because we would write recaps for each other to read and make each other laugh. And then people started following our Tumblr and they would comment or they would email us and say, your recaps are so funny, but why are there two? Like, we're really confused. And we were like, why are people reading our blog? Like, they're not supposed to be reading this. And so we decided, okay, well, let's just write together. We'll write the recap together. So we started writing the recap together, building, without realizing it, this community of fandom. And then we started a Twitter, and, we tweet funny stuff all the time, commentary, whatever. And one day we got an email. I think this was in 2014, maybe 13. I think it was 14 though, from Entertainment Weekly. And they said, we love your blog. We want you to launch a new community of, like, a new writer community off branch of Entertainment Weekly.
Loyal listeners, the field of fan connecting has always been a big one, populated with magazines and publicists, events, and women like Liz and Lindy and Dorothy, who see a need and they step in. So what starts out as their passion becomes a modest, at best, way to pay for the bills and perhaps receive a paycheck. And we know that it's because it's the entertainment industry that their exposure to decision makers has been hard fought. These women all started on the outside. The thread is that they stepped into a very crowded field, that they distinguished themselves, they added value, and they helped women, and continue to do so. They help women viewers find their voices. Today, online, at Pure Fandom, the work of Liz and Lindy, it looks like this.
Of course, like any website, we'll have featured articles of current and trending shows that are on. But we also have a lot of readers that are following shows like Game of Thrones, for example. People are talking about that show year round, even though those hiatuses are so long. And so our website is structured to where if you go to our fandoms menu, all of our content is organized just by that, fandoms. So it's by sci-fi, supernatural, horror, or show specific. We have Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, The Flash, Supergirl, Teen Wolf, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, Once Upon a Time. And a lot of the shows that have their own single dedicated page are shows where they are either already huge in their own right, like a show like Game of Thrones, right? Where we know that content's going to do well.
Listeners, I don't have to tell you that fans today have so many outlets to choose from to further their thoughts and their opinions and to keep their shows alive. Most of it is online, and then there are the conventions that transcend media, that comics mingle with pop culture throughout the world. And this is all storytelling that's brought to life in print and digital and audio. If you love a genre, you can find like-minded folks almost anywhere. But you are asking, because you are a fan of TV, how does one go from tweeting about a show, just demonstrating that you're a fan, to writing for a publication, to managing an expansive web presence? Here's Liz's story.
My other side gig is I'm a marketing consultant, and I do like digital marketing, social media marketing, but I didn't do any of this back then. So I had no idea like what that even meant. I was like, what do you mean biggest influencer for True Blood? But because of the following that we built and the reach we were able to get with just our grassroots strategies of promoting the show, we had a huge audience. And we wrote for Entertainment Weekly for a few years, and it was probably the best experience I've ever had. And I learned so much about not just proper writing, but storytelling and how to, convey a thoughtful piece, whether it's a recap or an essay or whatever, in under 2,000 words. And we decided we want to write about only the fandoms we want to write about, and it's definitely not anything against Entertainment Weekly, but, we were competing for shows with writers who had been writing there for decades. And so we really wanted to get back to things we were truly fans of. And so we decided to launch purefandom.com. And with that, we now have a team of probably 20 plus active writers. And we had more at one time, but we kind of expanded a little too quickly. And now we're kind of getting back to our roots of, we have great team of influencers in their respective fandoms. And we really let them be the CEO of their fandom. And whether that's a very specific fandom, like a specific show, or if it's just a genre, sci-fi, supernatural, horror, what have you. We let them really be the CEO of that on our website, and we give them all the tools they need. So if they need, paid promotions on social media to get a bigger audience, we give them that. We provide them with interviews with celebrities they're huge fans of. We send them to conventions, and we really try and keep that spirit of fandom alive.
Like Dorothy, Liz and her colleague Lindy quickly found that their ability to organize and their knowledge of the industry, trends, and the series content keeps them at the center of the conversation.
I've moderated, Lindy and myself moderate celebrity panels for them, as well as put on our own programming, meaning we'll do these immersive fan experiences like a Walking Dead panel, a Star Wars panel, Doctor Who panel, and it really is our website, but in live form. So, we do giveaways, we talk theories, all that sort of stuff.
So listeners, I have to tell you that the challenge of building this episode is that I had to take a look at just how much there was content-wise to share and to carve it out and to organize it so that I could actually tell this in an audio fashion. Because there's a lot to think about and understand from a feminist, a TV, and a women's achievement perspective. Foremost, when I say week in and week out that we tell the stories of leadership and achievement and persistence of TV women, I include Dorothy and Liz and her partner, Lindy, in that long list of TV women. They are influencers. They have built things. They lead fans. They provide platforms for respectful, insightful dialogue. And TV is a better place for their efforts through the eyes of women. And when you think about it, and that there are whole careers of women in the field of TV that they've helped, knowingly or not, that's where the power becomes exponential. Women see themselves on TV and they like what they see. And when those women voice their opinions, because there is still such great disparity, those opinions stand out in the larger din of men's voices. So while I have mentioned Sharon Gless a few times in this episode, it's because at 75, she's still a fan favorite. She's on Burn Notice. She's doing British TV. She's everywhere. She's got an email list and is on social media. And she regularly posts on Facebook and she tweets from her own phone. And I find that fascinating. And I think she would be the first to tell you that she appreciates her fans because she's been through so many series that were on the cusp that could have been renewed or canceled, and it took fan movement to put it over the top for renewal. And then in the case of Liz Prue's work in maintaining online communities, there is the whole subject of trolls and respect, civility and safety. Those are the modern day hazards of the work that she's doing. But we hear the statistics about disparity of TV and film reviewers, that there are so many more men than there are women who write about TV, who talk about the new series, who talk about the changes and the evolution and interview producers and directors. The sheer numbers in digital and print far outnumber men to women. But how does one get to become a reviewer? It would seem to me that tenacity and knowledge and confidence, and of course connections, it all plays a big role, and you have to have experience. And foremost, this writer has to feel like their opinion, her opinion, should be out there and valued. So I'd like to think that there are dozens of would-be reviewers for Rotten Tomatoes, a key review site, where the contributors might be finding their voices and value right now, today, on Pure Fandom pages, that they are running some of Liz and Lindy's best pages, that they're finding their voices and their words, and that they're realizing that they too deserve a bigger audience. And maybe that's going to be as a reviewer. So when we think about the legacy of Pure Fandom, it is the continued growth and nurturing of women who share this passion for TV and this feeling the need to celebrate some of this work and also provide real criticism, significant, regular real street criticism that's going to make a series better. Pure Fandom's work in this area, however, will be the subject of another episode, another installment of Advanced TV Herstory. Maintaining online communities and calling out trolls is an unseen, soul-sucking job. I would not want it for anything. And until behaviors and norms and cultures change, we need to celebrate and educate around this work. And that's important, and that deserves its own episode. Because bottom line, fans, women fans in particular, have one thing in common, and that is quality.
The prize is still the most viewers that they can get to watch, but those expectations have lowered, I believe.
Do you watch much TV?
I still like TV. Probably watch more news than I ever have, but I still have my appointment shows that I usually record them on DVR and watch them at my convenience. I've changed the way I watch television, but I haven't changed my desire to watch television.
What are your favorite series in recent years?
My favorite shows in recent years have been House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, The Americans, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Call the Midwife, Downton Abbey. If it's a good story told well and interestingly and with characters that touch me, that's going to become a favorite show. If it's mundane and ordinary and predictable and formulaic, it won't hold my interest.
Herstoryans, we hope this episode has held your interest. I owe a lot to the two women whose work and voices have opened countless doors for other women, Dorothy Collins Swanson and Liz Prue. Michael Sparaga gets credit, too, for spurring this conversation because for promoting the premiere of the documentary, United We Stand, he sent an inquiry email to advancedtvherstory@gmail.com, and we replied. Also, while every episode sounds great because of audio wizard Jen Eads, this episode literally sounds smart because it was Jen who introduced me to Liz. You know what? We may connect to Kevin Bacon before it's all over. Subscribe to this podcast at almost any place you like. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Public. And yes, now you can simply say, if you've got one of those devices, "Hey Google, take me to Advanced TV Herstory, episode 44. We are also on YouTube now. Subscribe to that channel, which is growing each month with more and more teasers and content produced by the talented Catherine Yang. We are on Instagram at Advanced TV Herstory. You can check out any of our content at tvherstory.com. We have a Facebook page, and it is called Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast. And lastly, we are on Patreon. So if you appreciate the work, the production, the research that goes into every installment of Advanced TV Herstory, do go to our website, TV Herstory, and on the homepage, scroll down to where there's a little button. It's just a little button, and it says, Become a Patron. And in supporting us in a modest way each month, you are supporting the future of this work. And I'm grateful to Rochelle for being our first Patreon patron, and just really appreciate the connection and the feedback we get from everybody, whether that's an email or likes or subscribes or Patreon support. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity for me to talk about women of TV, the leadership, the persistence, and the achievement in American culture today, in American herstory. This is why I podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.